Hello, welcome. My name is Grady Arno. I am an associate director here at Duke's Fuqua School of Business, and I'm here today for a Master in Market, where we discuss what a day in the life looks like for an alum of Fuqua. Today we have Caty Stanko, who is an alum of the Master in Management Studies program from the class of 2022. So, Caty, I'll turn it over to you if you want to do an introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Grady. I'm Caty. I am currently living in New York and working at Deloitte. Prior to that, I was at Duke for my master's in management, where I did as much as I possibly could in the year. I was an admissions ambassador and a fellow, and I studied at Villanova University for my undergrad. I'm doing a really good job so far. Studied at Villanova University for my undergrad. I was a communications major with a business minor. I went straight from undergrad to Duke, and so it's been a pretty fast track for the past, I guess, going on 6 years, which is crazy. But yeah,
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
of
So, tell
course.
me a little bit about your role at Deloitte.
Yeah, I definitely watched a YouTube video on my role at Deloitte to make sure I could answer this question well. But I am an analyst at Deloitte in their risk and financial advisory practice. I work with under financial services. It's really invigorating. It's really utilizing my degree a lot. I work with a lot of other Duke MMS alum, which has been great. Um, yeah, I started 4 months ago. Last Thursday was my 4 month anniversary at the firm. So far, so good. I have a hybrid job. So for me, that means working in my New York apartment or going into 30 Rock, which has been great. And I think we're going to get more into what my day to day looks like. But yeah,
Yeah, so let's jump right into that. Congrats on the
yeah,
4 months. That's great.
thank
Tell us
you.
what your day to day looks like, and is it the same every day or does it change?
Yeah, so it's no secret that Deloitte is absolutely huge. And since COVID, they've done a really great job of utilizing the hybrid model of work. I can't say it's necessarily my favorite, but my day to day is every day looks the same for the current project that I'm on. Projects at Deloitte tend to be in advisory, they tend to be a little bit longer of a duration. So when you think of consulting, I think people typically picture 3 to 4 week jobs, pretty fast paced. My job is fast paced, but I'm on a long term project. So I started on this in August, and I'll be on this project. It just got extended to March. It could go on beyond that. I start every single day with a touch point with my team. My immediate team is about 8 people. The larger team is 150 people. And I'm on meetings all day, every day, which makes it fun to figure out when to do the actual work. But that's just how I think consulting works in a post-COVID world where you can't be in a room with your whole team. But I'd say a lot of meetings, a lot of client-facing meetings. That's one of the major benefits of where I'm at in the firm. I work on a merger and acquisition project right now. So I know some of my peers don't necessarily get to be client facing, but every day I've talking to clients or trying to do so. And it's been great so far. I work typically from 8 to 6. I luckily don't have one of those jobs where I need to be awake at all hours of the day. I think that's great for my mental health and just who I am as a person. But every day's basically the same. The work changes vastly every day though. So what I'm doing different, how I do it the same.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So
Yeah.
you mentioned being having client-facing meetings as well as team meetings. So how do you manage those multiple priorities that you have throughout the day?
It's really difficult to look at your calendar and have to actually plan when you're going to take a walk outside. Like there have been days where it's 6 p.m. and I'm like, I see it's 70 degrees outside. And it's like, oh my God, I haven't been outside once today. That's terrible. But my job is really forgiving in the sense where you can block out an hour every day to be like, this is when I'm going to the gym, or this is when I'm cooking dinner for my kids. I know right now, both of my managers have young children, and every day from 5 to 7, they're offline and they finish their work days afterwards. I've adopted a similar process where when they log off at 5, I log off at 5. I eat dinner, I sort of get my life in order, and then I'll log back on if I need to. The balance between meeting with my team versus meeting with clients is kind of just like the same as going into class because you have class or going into class because you have a test. You show up a little bit differently, but you bring your notebook anyway. And it's also been interesting to navigate when you're listening versus when you're speaking versus when you're active listening because you have to teach yourself something. I would say that these types of jobs, you become a little bit less unique when you're in them because everyone's a straight A student. So if you have the mentality to be able to do something like MMS, you have the work ethic to do it in the real world.
Yeah, so you've brought up MMS a few times now and being from the class, which is great to hear. What was your goal going into the MMS program, and how did you decide upon getting a job at Deloitte?
Yeah, I mean, Grady, should I go into my whole litany of how I got to Duke?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. My goal going into MMS was to get into MMS. I was waitlisted. I bothered Grady specifically every day of the week until I got in. And I'm not sure if it was Grady directly or if it was someone else, but I remember promising that if I was let in, I would do everything I could to make the most of the year. So when I got in, I was a kid in a candy store. It was the best year of my life. I'm so happy to do it. I think about it every single day. It is the reason I have this job. But at Duke, the goal was to get the most out of an incredible establishment with incredible people. And in those efforts, I found myself with the stamina and grit to want to get a job like this. I distinctly remember sitting down with Steve Mizuraka and saying I thought I was going to have to ask him questions, but he started asking me questions. And he was like, where do you see yourself? What kind of job are you looking for? And I had no response to that. I didn't know what I wanted to do in undergrad, which was part of the reason why I went to Duke. And I kind of sat there and I was like, I really don't know what I want to do. I come from a family of lawyers. So I didn't really even know what you could be beyond a teacher, a lawyer, or a doctor. And I said to Steve, I was like, I mean, you know me pretty well by now. Can you think of anyone in years past that sort of remind you of me that I could speak to and see what they do and how they've sort of made a living, and ask if they're happy? Because that's huge to me. You'd think that'd be obvious, but it was really important to me that my job made me happy. And he connected me to Lizzie Fitzpatrick, who's actually a colleague of mine now. And we run in very similar professional circles. But I won't lie, I kind of forget the question. Oh, the job. So when I had that conversation with Steve, I ended up having a conversation with Lizzie following. And then the idea of consulting really resonated with me because, like I've mentioned, it's very client facing. And like you've come to know, and anyone watching, I talk a lot, and I love having an outgoing personality. And I think sometimes people fear that in the business world or a business space, you have to be a muted version of yourself. And in consulting, you absolutely don't have to be. So it started as someone else's idea, quite frankly. And then I sort of manifested it into what I wanted my professional career to look like. So it all goes back to Duke. It always goes back to Duke.
And one thing, once you got the job, it was about halfway through the year of last year, correct? Or this past year?
Yeah.
January, February. Around that same time, the CEO of Deloitte came to campus for a distinguished speaker series. And you went right out to him after the session, which even there was a room full of daytime MBA students, MMS students, MQM students, staff, and you were the first one to go greet him. Why did you do that? And what was that experience like?
You're being kind saying that I walked right up to him. I definitely sprinted and body checked a few people, but I think what happened in that moment was I heard my dad in my ear being like, when you're in a room with someone, first of all, I was always taught that when you go over to your friend's house, you go shake their parents' hand, you ask them how they're doing. And I mean, don't tell my dad I said this because that's giving him too much credit, but I think it was the way I was raised. I saw the opportunity and I wanted to go. Very intelligent man know that I just got a job at his firm. So I body checked a few people, ran up to him, and I just said, I was like, hi, I'm Caty. I just accepted a job at Deloitte, and I can touch on that in a second, but shook his hand and I said, I'm starting in July. And he said, what office? And I said, Manhattan. And he was like, oh, that's my office too. And I just was like, oh, cool. We have the same office. I didn't think that the CEO of Deloitte has a whole entire floor in Rockefeller, but he said, when you get there, shoot me an email and we'll get coffee. And I was like, okay, like, sure. So I started July 16th or July 11th, and I got coffee with Joe Yu on probably 2 weeks later. I didn't even have badge access to get into his floor. I tried to open the door. I was like, of course I can't open the door to get up here. And I sat down with him, and it was an incredible conversation. I think the lack of thought process behind it is part of why it went so well, because I was just being myself. I was just being the person that my dad raised me to be, which was like, you go say hi, you go shake someone's hand. And I ended up sitting down with him for 30 minutes. It was a wonderful conversation. As I was on my way out the door, a Villanova alum was walking in, and I didn't know who this person was. Now I know he's a managing director. He's pretty high up at Deloitte. He works in mergers and acquisitions. This was before I was even staffed on a project. And Joe Yu was like, oh, speak of the devil, here's a Villanova grad. He introduced me to this man. I've been connected to this person for weeks now, months, I guess. And he helped me get on my first project. He's been very supportive of my career. And it's funny because when it comes up that I've spoken to Joe Yu, I have these very well-established professionals looking at me like I have 8 heads. They're like, I've worked here for 24 years and I've never met this man. And so I think it's one of those things where in the moment I just got the rush, and I'm really, really glad I did it, because I think it's helped set me apart a lot. And Grady, this about me, I'm not one to walk around and toot my own horn, but I think if I could give any piece of advice, when they tell you to dress like you're meeting the CEO of your favorite company every day at Duke, like I did that, and you're equipped with the skills to go say hi. Everyone can go say hi. So, I mean, it was a cool experience.
Absolutely. Very, very unique situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
How it's paid off since. So in the last answer, you also mentioned the office. What's the office culture like? How does it compare to your previous experiences, whether it was in an internship or in school?
Yeah. So right off the bat, how it compares is just that it kind of doesn't. Every internship I had was pre-COVID. So just as you'd imagine, it's just a very different environment. The office culture at Deloitte is really fun. I don't know that that's what you would expect. It's not what I expected. The office doesn't have ping pong tables or anything, but there's a lot of camaraderie. There's a lot of pinging people and getting coffee and going downstairs and like going to Dunkin' Donuts and stuff like that. I don't have a team based in New York. So when I go into the office, I'm with people I onboarded with about 400 other analysts, my age, my graduation year, etc. So we'll plan to go into the office together, and we'll go to a happy hour after. I normally try and function on like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or 2 of those 3 days in the office. It's called hoteling. You just book a space, you make yourself at home for the day, and then you can leave kind of whenever. It's interesting because I have a feeling that if you asked someone who's been at this job for 4 years, they would have a much different perspective. But because I'm in a post-COVID world and I started 4 months ago, I actually get more strange looks about how frequent I go into the office than anything else, because most people just work from the comfort of their own home. The dynamic, though, is everyone's door is open, because there really are no doors, actually. Like, there's literally no doors in the office. So like you can always just talk to people, which is great. There's a lot of internal networking. I don't know if this is all consulting, but at Deloitte, at least, it's kind of a job within a job. So every project you get on, you can wait and you can be placed on a project, or you can see a project or hear about it and you can go after it, which is that's the preferred method, I would say, because that's how you find your niche. And that helps. The office culture helps like navigate that. And as COVID lightens up, there are more people in the office, which makes it a little bit more fun. It's a good change of pace.
Good.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. So you're just talking about how you have to apply to be on certain jobs. And one thing that Deloitte does is the business chemistry test that all new employees take. Have you taken that yet? And could you talk a little bit about that and how you've used it to your advantage?
Yeah. So I've taken this test probably, I'm going to go with 4 times in my life. And I took it again at Deloitte, and I was like, this is so funny. Like, why do companies do this? Because you take it and then no one ever asks you about it. When I tell you this has come up in more conversations than I could ever have imagined, it's crazy. I'm a pioneer and an integrator, which I think are the like creative ones, which would make sense to me. And they actually try to staff projects when you're looking top down. They'll pick partners and MDs and managing director, like all of these people based on their business chemistry. So I was in an all hands meeting when my team was co-locating in New York with all of the PPMDs, all of the principals, partners, all of them. For some reason, I had gotten chosen to take the notes of that meeting and share my screen and all of that. And they all went around and all 30 of these very well-established professionals went around and spoke about their business chemistry. And in that specific situation, they were at a very big lack of guardians. And they made a plan to find someone that had that quality because they felt it would improve the team immensely. So my business chemistry test, I guess, will come in handy a lot. I think when you're an analyst, you kind of have to be multifaceted regardless, but it does help you understand what you bring to the table. And a little bit of an aside from that, there's so much information that comes from once you get those results, you can do a lot of research on what that means for you as a professional, and something that it's like a horoscope kind of. When I was reading it, it was like pioneers and integrators don't necessarily handle criticism well, and that's something that I've always been concerned about. But when you read through it, you can understand from the perspective of a guardian or a driver how they deliver constructive criticism and how you receive it. So it's actually helped me in a lot of situations where I'm on calls with the manager above me or the partner above me, where I'm receiving their constructive criticism and I'm understanding this is a driver talking to me. They're going to be a little bit more like straight to the point. They're not going to sugarcoat it a lot. It has nothing to do with my intelligence level. It has nothing to do with whether they like me or not. It's just how they approach a conversation. And it helps how I respond, because my typical, when I'm in those when I'm feeling inferior in a situation, I'll try and make an excuse for why I did what I did. But what you can't do in the professional world is make excuses. So you learn how to adapt. And I think taking that business chemistry test, this was the first time I actually relied on the results and sort of understood what they represent for me as an employee of Deloitte.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Last time I saw you, it was right in July. So about when you started the role, and you were on your way to Deloitte University.
Yeah.
And when a lot of people think about Deloitte and consulting in general, they think a lot of travel is involved. Could you talk a little bit about what your experience at Deloitte University was like, and what travel is like for your role?
Sure. Yeah. I'll start with Deloitte University. It's, for people who don't know, it's in Texas. It's on a large amount of acreage. They actually just developed an expansion plan that's like a multi-million-dollar expansion, which is crazy. I don't really know why it has to get any bigger, but it's essentially, I don't know how to put it, but it's basically like a giant Deloitte hotel where everything somehow goes back to Deloitte. They call it the barn. There's a bar and there's a lot of activities. They have comedians come in, they have musicians come in. So I went with about 400 other people that were getting my job at the same time. And I left with a friend who lives in Michigan and works in the Michigan office. And my group chat of people that I go into the New York office with, I met at DU. And it was really, they send you when you get hired for that reason, to sort of start your network, to make those friends, to branch off of the people that you might have been hired with. It's a lot of campus hires. And I went with, I think there's 8 out of the class of 2022 from Duke that have the same job as me. And we were all split up in different rooms. It's a lot of training. It's a lot of understanding the ethics of the company, understanding how to sort of stay compliant with the work you're doing, because a lot of it is private and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I probably won't be back at DU for a few years. You can't necessarily find an excuse to go. There's a purpose always. They sometimes have clients and everything there, but my specific client is not based anywhere near Texas. So in regards to traveling, unfortunately, COVID kind of took away Deloitte's view on consulting traveling. They're a lot more conservative with when they send you to a client site or what have you. I have not traveled yet. However, my team of 150 people traveled to New York, probably the third week I was on this project and I had to plan it for everyone, which was intense. But anything to get your name out there and show that you're willing to work hard. So traveling for me specifically, kind of non-existent. It's not forever. The project I'm on right now is fixed, so there's a budget and you need a reason to go. I would say now it's a lot less of getting your team in a room and it's way more of listening to the client. So if the client wants you to be in person, then they'll figure out how to make that happen. I will say though that I know that at other companies, I have friends that work at BCG and Bain, they're traveling just as much as you probably would have been pre-COVID. And then even at Deloitte, it just depends on the project. Right now, I happen to be on a very remote project. And I don't mind it because the rent that I spend in New York is not worth it to be traveling all the time.
Yes, that comes up a lot when we're talking to people that live in New York and are never in their apartments.
Yeah, exactly.
So last question for you. What
Sure.
makes you most excited every day to wake up and work on your job?
What a loaded question. Well, I have a magnificent view out of my window, so it doesn't hurt that when I wake up, sometimes I catch that sunrise. I would say that, and maybe this is like advice, not that I'm qualified to be giving advice, but when you go from being such a type A, high-strung student who devoted, I don't even know how many, a lot of years of school, you have to sort of find how to get that same adrenaline rush from a good grade that you don't get good grades anymore. Now you get good reviews, or now you get rewards or benefits or something like that. So I would say the push for me is very personal in that I want to be successful and I want to be happy, and that's kind of all in my own hands. It's been a little bit of a learning curve to realize that academically you're kind of on academically it's not necessarily cutthroat, because while you're competing with people for good grades, you also have these like friendships and you hang out with them outside of school. But in your job, it's every man for themselves. And you have these teams that really care about you and want to see you succeed and do exactly what you want. So I think what excites me is that I work at a giant firm that would rather you stay and do what you want to do, even if that means moving laterally, than go to another company and do something that Deloitte offers. So every day is different. I wouldn't say I wake up and say thank God for Deloitte, but I definitely wake up and think I'm very lucky to have this job. It's a great opportunity. I don't know where I see myself in 15 years, but I know for the foreseeable future, I have a great learning experience in front of me, in a great city with great people. And my team, I'm very lucky to have them. My team is a group of 8 men and myself. So there's a lot of jokes, there's a lot of humor. I think that you can either be happy on a project or you can be happy with a team. And the way it's been sort of explained to me is be happy with a team, because you can make a project look however you want it to and it'll be over in a certain amount of time. But the team that you create and the sort of posse, for lack of a better word, that you cultivate follows you. And that support is so important. So just as you connect with a professor in school, you can connect with a manager and you can develop that relationship. So I think for me, it's just every day I get to be myself. I get to make quirky jokes. I get to talk a lot. I'm not bored yet, which is great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Caty. I really appreciate you taking time to chat with me today.
Of course.
And I hope you have a great rest of your day.